Late on the afternoon of September 11th, 2001, I made a photograph of three firemen raising a flag amid the rubble of the World Trade Center. For many, the image has become the symbol of that tragic day. For me, it was something that just happened, a moment to which I was witness. I shot it the best I could, and I moved on. The events of that day and other photographs I made are every bit as vivid and significant to me. I remember the chill I felt shortly after 9 a.m. as I rode the elevator from the fourth floor at the Record in Hackensack and saw the burning North Tower across the Hudson. I recall my despair after losing my last shots of the World Trade Center still standing as two towers. They disappeared when a policeman jostled me, jarring my digital camera. I remember my stunned disbelief as the first and then the second tower collapsed amid a dense cloud. From where I stood, the enormous eruption blocked out the otherwise blue sky, as the towers seemed to fall without a sound. I remember hiding behind my camera as I made pictures of injured victims being treated at a triage center at Exchange Place in Jersey City. I peered through the viewfinder. Tears filled my eyes and streamed down my cheek. I recall the adrenaline rush I felt as a tugboat ferried me from New Jersey toward the burning skyline, toward a cityscape I no longer recognized. I remember the silent pep talk I gave myself as I got off the boat. My job was to document and record history, not to become emotionally impaired. The fallen towers I had made so many pictures of since I was a child were now a huge mound of mangled metal and ash. Only a few strands of the facade remained intact. I made pictures of two firemen hopelessly trying to douse the smoke with a faint stream of water, the facade looming behind them like a ghost. The dust turned everything gray. It filled the air and littered the landscape with calculators, shoes, framed photos, couch cushions, and financial reports. I made images of firemen searching for survivors and of people transfixed by shock. I climbed and slid around shards of metal and mounds of crumbled material, at times standing ankle-deep in water. At about 4:45, the firemen and rescue workers began evacuating the Ground Zero area. Building 7 was about to collapse, the very building I was standing under just a few hours earlier. I followed them a block west to the first aid area, where food and drinks were made available. There were hundreds of firemen and rescue personnel there. It looked like a wake. Everyone was quiet, with their heads down. It was getting late. I had only a few frames left on my camera and a whole day's worth of pictures recorded. Before I left, I decided to take one last look, so I walked back towards the Ground Zero area. That's when I saw the firemen with the flag, and a flagpole wedged at an odd angle atop a pile of rubble about 15 feet high. I waited, still unsure about what was happening. Just then the fireman in the center, Dan McWilliams, hoisted the flag up the pole. His colleagues, George Johnson and Billy Eisengrein, looked on. I was about 30 yards away, and shot a burst of frames as the flag went up. I ran over to where they were, but then the firefighters climbed down and walked past me. It was over that quickly. I don't think the firemen had any idea their spontaneous act of patriotism was being photographed. I do recall recognizing the obvious similarity to Joe Rosenthal's Iwo Jima image. I certainly was aware of the symbolism happening before my eyes, but there was no way to predict its broader impact. I made a few last photographs of the flag flying and the Trade Center wreckage in the background. I then hitched a boat ride back to New Jersey. I didn't cover any of the Ground Zero search and recovery, nor did I venture back to Lower Manhattan to steal a peek. My first return was covering the first anniversary. That day, I made my way down into the pit, where a wicked wind cruelly greeted thousands of weeping loved ones. Again, I remember shooting through tears. This was far more difficult than 9/11. The emotion was so raw and vast. I didn't stay long, but before I left, I made some photos of an extended family wearing the same shirt. "We love you, Jim" was printed on the back. I did not talk to them. I just quietly observed with my camera. Later that day, I learned that Jim was James Bryan Riley, a young bond trader working in the South Tower. I also learned something else about James Riley. It turns out that he was the only victim of the 9/11 attacks who graduated from my high school. For me, the story of 9/11 is far-reaching, its effect immeasurable. On this 7th anniversary, I still struggle to find some meaning to it all. This is Thomas E. Franklin, staff photographer and multimedia editor at The Record.